Saying the Asuk B'divrei Torah blessing together. Baruch
Atah
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has made us holy with your commandments and command us to busy ourselves with the words of Torah. All right, so a quick recap. This is a street sign for Rivka Street. It is where some excellent barekas can be found at Bareka Zima in Jerusalem. Our prologue is from right after the binding of Isaac, the Akedah. We find out that Rivka has been born. Then Act 1 is meet Rebecca. We went to the American Girl doll store today, so in her honor.
You made it alive?
Yes, probably the only American Girl on Safaria, but perhaps not, who knows. So Act 1, Scene 1, Abraham tells Eliezer to go back to where Abraham came from and find a wife for Abraham's son Isaac. And the wife has to come back to the land of Israel. Scene 2. Eliezer goes and, like anybody else who is considering a marriage, he has to come up with some criteria. So Eliezer's criteria are that he's going to stand by the well. Lots of things happen at wells in the book of Genesis. And when he asks a young woman, please lower your jar that I may drink, if she says drink and I will also provide water for your camels, then I will know that I, being Eliezer, will know that that is the person. All right. Scene 3. Eliezer has just finished saying this, and behold, Rivka comes out, Rebecca comes out, as the text describes her. She is a Betulah, someone who is sexually mature and yet not married, and she goes to get some water, and Eliezer says, could I please have a little water? And she says, absolutely. And also, how about some water for your camels? Which is no small offer, given that camels drink a lot of water, and there's a lot of camels this time. So, she gives water to the camels, they finish drinking, he gives her some rings and bracelets as payment, and then he asks, who are you? Is there any room at your parents' house for us to spend the night? And she says, I am the daughter of Betuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. Ding, ding, ding. She is from Abraham's family, so she's the one he's looking for. And she says, there's plenty of straw and feed at home, also room to spend the night. So Eliezer, who this text doesn't actually name him as Eliezer, it's a different text where Abraham, before he has any kids, in Parshat Lech Lecha, Genesis, 15 probably, Abraham says to God, God, you keep saying that I'm going to have lots of descendants, but I don't have any kids. Are all of my belongings going to go to Eliezer, my chief of staff, so to speak, the servant I trust with all my big jobs? So this is why we call him, this guy here, Eliezer. He's not actually called Eliezer in this particular text, in case you're wondering where I'm getting this Eliezer name from. So Eliezer bows low in homage to God and says, "Thanks, God, God of my master Abraham, because he wants something done, and you have helped make sure that this got done." All right. I think that is as far as we got last time, but somebody could correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
All right. Seeing no corrections, onward we go.
One correction.
Please.
I think we got to the point where wasn't he describing the story to the family?
She's
Did we get
about
that
ready
far?
to leave.
Yeah. We wanted to go.
All right. Very well. I'll recap scene 4. So, Rebecca goes, tells everything to her mother's household. Rebecca has a brother named Laban or Lavan. Laban goes out to greet the guy who's still at the well. When he sees the nose ring and the bands on his sister's arms, it is assumed by somebody, I don't remember who at the moment, that the reason that Laban goes to greet Jacob so effusively in this coming week's parsha is because the last time somebody was coming from that side of the family in the land of Israel, they had a lot of jewelry, a lot of gold. And so Laban is giving Jacob an effusive hug, not anticipating that he's going to be a penniless fugitive from his brother's wrath. So that ties back to our story here. All right, so Laban, who is Rebecca's brother, not the father, says, "Come in. Why are you still outside? I've got room for you in the house. I've got a place for the camels." And so he comes in. The camels get food and straw. He gets water to bathe his feet. Back then, hospitality was water to bathe your feet. Today, hospitality is giving the Wi-Fi password, but that was what they did back then. So he is given food, but he says, "I'm not going to eat until I've told my tale." So they say, "Great, go ahead." And then he recaps pretty close to word for word everything that we just saw in the previous 3 scenes, which gets a comment from somebody that probably Rashi, that the words of those who are on important missions are given like a lot of space in the Torah, whereas other people's work, like the Torah is very laconic. It doesn't say a lot of detail, which is why we have so many midrashim, so many stories to fill in the gaps. But this guy gets another, like a verbatim recap, basically, of what just happened. So this is picked up on by the commentators. And you're welcome to make your own conclusions about this as well. So, he says in the end that, so that's what I've been up to. That's why I'm here. Let me know if I can take Rebecca or not. And Rebecca's brother, Laban, and her father, Bethuel, say, clearly, God has a hand in this. Here's Rebecca. You can have her. Let her be a wife to your master's son, as God has spoken. And Abraham's servant bows low to the ground before God. End of scene. Rebecca has no say in the matter. Her mother has no say in the matter. It's just a conversation between the guys. She might as well not even be there.
David, sorry,
Yes.
I must respectfully disagree. I think
Um,
they ask her. and she
Not in
said
this scene,
she'll
they
go.
don't. Not in this scene, they
Oh,
don't.
not in this scene? Okay, they do eventually. They do somewhere before they leave. Yeah.
They have not given her any word so far.
I'm good. If I
David,
I apologize for jumping the gun. Sorry.
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Wasn't Lavan the one that spoke for his father? Not both of them together?
Not so far. Here in this scene, I would say I don't think so. Well, Lavan is the one who goes out to greet Eliezer at the well. But then in verse 50, yeah, there it is. Vaya'an Lavan uvtuel vayomru, and Laban and Bethuel answered, and they said, plural. So right now they are both speaking.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So keep an eye on who gets to talk.
So Rebecca gives Eliezer water, the camels water, and she gets this gold.
Yes.
And she goes back home and nobody says, what did you get? Where's this gold from? Why did you get it? What does he want from you? What is this, what is this stranger doing? It may have been very acceptable then. Using today's eyes, it's very disturbing. But
today they only
Yeah.
give candy.
what, Herb?
Today they only give candy. They
Yeah,
don't give.
I guess.
I mean,
Trick or treat.
another way of thinking about it is as if she is the gas station attendant who has unprompted come out to offer to refill the camels, and then he needs a place to stay. But yes, he hasn't said, other than the fact that he's clearly a stranger in the town, and clearly he needs a place to stay. He hasn't revealed anything about why he's there, why he's passing through this place. So she's recapped what happened, presumably, where it says told all this to her mother's household, how she offered to give the guy, he asked for some water, she offered to water the camels too. They seemed a little thirsty. He gave her some jewelry as thanks, and then asked who she was and if there was a place to stay.
I don't know what the customs in those days, but the bracelets are one thing, but I would have thought the nose ring is more than just giving her a tip or a gift or paying her for what she was doing. To me at least, there's some other connotation involved with the nose ring.
To me, any of the that amount of valuables is not something you just give to someone like that. There's some significant value to that, certainly. So there's meant to be I would think quite a demonstration of gratitude and willingness to come closer to this young lady for be in her good graces at least. And the family, this is demonstrating as well that he has some substance behind him, one way or the other, whether it's his or his master's, that clearly everybody was happy to receive him. I can see when my brother-in-laws were debating whether I was a good candidate for their sister, because they had somebody else in mind that they thought it was much better off economically. He was, but that wasn't the essential thing there. And of course, we're in a different age, so that didn't go too far, but there was some. So I can sense how this situation, someone with a little bit more wherewithal might, attract some interest, at least to the family, to convince them.
Yeah. All right, let's see what happens next. Scene 5. Octavia, would you read, please?
The servant brought out objects of silver and gold and garments. He gave them to Rebekah, and he gave presents to her brother and her mother. Then he and the entourage under him ate and drank, and they spent the night. When they rose next morning, he said, "Give me leave to go to my master." But her brother and her mother said, "Let the maiden remain with us some 10 days, then you may go." He said to them, "Do not delay me, now that Hashem has made my errand successful. Give me leave that I may go to my master." And they said, "Let us call the girl and ask for her reply." They called her back and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" She said, "I will." So they sent her off, their sister Rebekah and her nurse, along with Abraham's servant and his entourage. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "O sister, may you grow into thousands of myriads. May your descendants seize the gates of their foes." Then Rebekah and her maids arose, mounted the camels, and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and went his way. This is the origin of the requirement. Even in a Jewish arranged marriage, a woman must give consent. See Rashi on Genesis 24:58 and Genesis Rabbah 60:12. What might Rebekah be thinking during this part of the story? What might Rebekah be feeling during this part of the story?
Thank you, Hinda.
David, just one question. They gave her nurse to go along, but then it says her maids, plural, arose and mounted the camels.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a mistranslation? Does it go from singular to plural?
Let's check the Hebrew. All
And
right,
if
the
not,
nurses.
how do you explain that?
That's fair. So the nurse is in 59, the maids are in 61. All right, 59. Okay, we've got at Rivka Achotam vet Menikita. So that is nurse singular. 61. Vatakam Rivka V'na'aroteha. That is maids plural. So this is a gender thing. I'm less concerned about the singular to plural, because it seems like they, in verse 59, they send Rivka and her nurse, who would be presumably the person who took care of Rivka when she was like a baby, and someone that she's grown up with as a mother figure. So they're saying, you can go and you can take your like surrogate mother with you. And then in 61, Rivka and her young women maids go. So because there's an age difference, I don't think this is a confusion or a pluralization of the same person. It's more a matter of where is the nurse in verse 61, which is still a question. I don't have an answer.
Was this a trust issue? I mean, they sent her accompanied by people who knew her all her life. Just maybe in case things didn't work out well, she would have some protection. They didn't really fully know what this is about. What I find troubling is that giving her bracelets and nose rings, was that God's idea? God orchestrated this whole thing, I thought. And yet it seems as though maybe Eliezer did it on his own, which would make me feel better. Because it bothers me that God would think he would need, or she, or it would need to bribe Rebecca with articles instead of trusting the faith of this man to be an exceptional man, and trusting her judgment. I mean, she didn't really know a thing about Isaac. And off she goes, but she's been bribed by God. I just understand that.
Yeah, so that's a reasonable question. It sounds like you're asking, like, is God bribing Rebecca to go? Basically, is like you're asking, is the bribe God's idea or Eliezer's idea? Is that basically what you're asking?
Yeah.
All right, a good question. So in scene 1, we have Abraham talking to, quote, the senior servant of his household, we assume, who has charge of all that he owned. So we assume that this is Eliezer. And he says, the God of heaven will send a messenger before you, and you will get away from my son from there. All right, so in scene 1, we see nothing about bribes. Scene 2, the servant sets out, takes 10 of his master's camels, and sets out, taking with him all the bounty of his master. So it may be that the servant I'm going to make up the world's newest midrash, and I'm going to explicitly tell you that I'm going to have a positive interpretation towards Eliezer, as it says in Pirkei Avot, judge every person favorably, 1:6. So I'm going to say that possibly, perhaps, Eliezer was thinking that it was important to make a good impression on the unknown woman's family, insofar as if they are being asked to send her to some guy they've never met, some place that's, I think I determined last week, a 3-week journey away by camel, then they might be more willing to do that if they know she's not going to starve. So he is taking this with the impression, making a good impression, with the goal of making a good impression on her family.
But they had no idea if there was no familiar relation there at all, because isn't he informed them who his master is?
Yeah, he does.
Oh.
Well, during the story, he
Let's
does.
see.
During the story, he does.
Yeah.
While you're looking, I'm missing an important word in this conversation in the text.
I am
That
Abraham's servant.
Kedushin.
He began.
I'm missing Kedushin. These are forms of betrothal. Giving a woman jewelry is betrothal.
Yeah.
And I would think even at that time, I don't think it was new to us.
Yes, that's it. It could be. So Barry is bringing up the fact that giving a woman something, an item of value, is a form of betrothal, which would be like the modern equivalent of an engagement ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and at the point when he gives it to her, she doesn't know, like, all she's done is water the camels and give them a little water. So betrothal under false pretenses doesn't count. So I don't know if that would be exactly what's going on, at least at the point when she gives it, when he gives those things to her. It could be later, once she knows why he's there, she could say, no, you can take these back, never mind, have a good day.
Mhm.
And it could be considered that if she decides to keep it, she's accepted. I could see it going that way.
But David,
Yes.
so I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but when he did give that to her, I you know, it was a gift, but it also shows not just to her, but I feel like to her family, that he comes from a wealthy master, and to show that you know, your daughter will be taken care of, and not to be, you know, discouraged that, oh, you know, I don't know who my child is going to, or she's going to be well taken care of, is she, you know, going to be fed, and she can have a husband that will support her. That's how I'm taking it.
It seems like a very reasonable interpretation of what's going on here.
In this world, I think we think of it as a scam because we don't really know that he's got a master who's got a son for this girl. All they know is what he's telling them, which may or may not be true.
Well, this is true.
That's true. They're going to have to take this entirely on faith. He's not even bringing a photograph.
Right.
What they do know is that they are sending her off with some guy who has a lot of money. So presumably she'll get some food to eat wherever she's going.
Well, but they do know purportedly that his master is Abraham and his wife is Sarah, if you take at face value what he tells them.
Right.
And if he's in
He's
the
either
family, not to be some, maybe we're not privy to all the details of the conversation that they would have had. Oh, well, I'm the master, and you talk about the family and this and that, and the details that come out. Same thing happened to my daughter when she went to work out in Ohio in the Obama campaign. I told her, you know, we have some cousins out in Columbus. I haven't seen them since I was 13 or 14, but my father was very close to them. Go look them up. And she called them up, and they were skeptical until she gave them a little bit more information. And so, same thing. She wasn't looking to get married or offering anybody, but it's a similar situation. They were skeptical, but then she exchanged some information and kind of said, "Oh, yeah," and then they were still skeptical until I went out and visited with them a year or two later, and then I gave them some real clear details that some person who was not a family member would not have ever known, because they're small, little, intimate family details. So that's why I'm thinking that I'm imagining that may have been going on in their conversations when they greeted each other and they sat and they had something to eat, and clearly people engage in conversation. And why would they not know that their relative is out there and farther to the west? And if he's a wealthy man, wouldn't there would be some? I would suppose there might be some knowledge of his activities, and it's not that far. It's 3 or 4 weeks away.
Absolutely, Charles. Good point. Local boy makes good. Yep, that the king.
And Eliezer does give the genealogy, not exactly the genealogy, but he has the right names. Like he says, I am the servant of Abraham, and Abraham is married to Sarah. So either he's a con guy who's done his research because he's got the right names for the family tree, because we're talking Rebecca and Laban's father is Bethuel. Bethuel's father is Nahor. Their grandfather's brother is Abraham. And actually, Bethuel's uncle is Abraham.
It's a great uncle.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and even if he was
in both senses.
at the last time they saw him, Abram married to Sarai, and now he's being cited as Abraham married to Sarah, close enough.
And Yitzhak is the reason.
I didn't get the impression that they really cared what happened to her. They were more interested in what they could get out of this relationship and not too concerned about her well-being.
Could be. Just like my brother-in-laws, working to get the most out of the wish for tender.
Hmm.
Things
I'm
haven't changed.
surprised Rebecca doesn't ask more questions. I'm surprised that she just goes. I mean, she's a smart woman, so we learn later, and an independent one. And I would have thought, given what I know about her post this episode, that she would have said, could you tell me a little bit more about who we're going to see there? Could you tell me more about why you came here in the first place? What's your what's your errand about? But she doesn't ask any questions. That's just, I just can't accept that.
Mhm.
It doesn't make any sense to me. She would go off on him without using her intelligence that she had.
I'm a little puzzled because I thought, and maybe you did touch on this, David, but I'm not sure how explicit it was, that in verse 48, in one of the tellings and retellings of this story with the variations, he says, the servant says, Eliezer says, the Lord Hashem, the God of my master Abraham, who led me on the right way to get the daughter of my master's brother. So they know, unless he's making the whole thing up and he's, as you said, doing his research, they know who his master is and the family relationship. Is that not correct?
Mhm.
No, it's right.
So and then they graciously tell the girl, it's up to her, but they'd like the servant to stay and Eliezer and have 10 days for her to adjust to her new future situation. But she says, "I'll go right now." So
I mean, they don't.
that's
They don't
the form
say,
of the tale, anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, they don't give her the choice at first. They say, "Here she is. Take her and go." Here's Rebecca before you, verse 51. Take her and go. Let her be a wife to your master's son, as God has spoken. And then when in the next, as I'm dividing them in the next scene, then Eliezer gives presents to the family, I guess a dowry or bride price, that's what it is. And then the next day Eliezer wants to go, and her brother and her mother, which, Zoya, this is what you raised earlier, the father has mysteriously disappeared. The commentators have a field day with this. You're welcome to come up with your own interpretations, because the text, you can read the text as well as they can. Bethuel is now out of the picture. But the brother and the mother say, let the maiden remain with us some 10 days, then you can go. Eliezer says, I'd like to leave now. And they say, okay, let's ask Rebecca, let's call the girl and ask for her reply. So they call to Rebecca, which makes it seem as if she was not there beforehand, and ask, will you go? And she says, I will. And then they send her off and they give her a blessing.
David, Phil was talking about the lineage. Is Rebecca Isaac's niece?
No, she is his first cousin once removed, technically speaking, although they are of the same generation or the same age. It's like my daughter
They're the same age, I'm thinking about the generations.
Exactly. Yes, my daughter is 2 days younger than her second cousin, but 1 generation older, because of the way that generations played out in my wife's family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not sure they're the same age. At the Akeda, somebody calculated the Akeda.
We
that
can
the check was
talk. We
37.
spent a lot of time on that last week. We can talk about it after the class.
Okay. Okay.
So the question is, what might Rebecca be thinking, and what might she be feeling during this part of the story?
Maybe she knew it was her calling, and that's why she went so easily. Like maybe she knew somewhere intuitively that this is what she was to do.
I finally have a good way to get away from this family.
But David, we're also idol worshippers, and I knew, she wanted to get, like Herbert said, that she wanted to get away from this family. And when the first time when they didn't include her, because they weren't sure that they are the parents, and then the second time they just is it like they pretended like, oh, let's just give her a chance to show Eliezer that we're such good parents. We want our child to be comfortable, to know that it's her choice where she's going, that we don't want to push her.
Yeah, you could read it as we're going to give you the pretense of choice, or we're going to make Eliezer think that we're giving the pretense of choice. You could also read it as Rebecca's getting the choice. Will you go with this man now, or will you go with him in 10 days? Although they don't explicitly say that. Yeah, dealing with the two different ways that they say, like the two times, one where they say, okay, you can take her and go, and it appears that she's right there, at least based off how I read the text. And then the next day, when she's not there for the conversation about, I'd like to leave now, no, let her stay 10 days. And then they call her and they ask if she will go. You could take that a couple different ways. And as long as they don't flatly contradict the text, it's all kosher. I'm getting a question in the chat of whether there's anything significant about it being 10 days. Let the maiden remain with us some 10 days, then you may go. I don't know why they chose 10 days. The commentators may have commented on this. I will investigate, and in the meantime, you all are free to come up with your own explanations as to why 10 days. Because everybody's working with the same text in the Torah. All right.
Related. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
Okay. Email my Gabriel and I'll put in the follow-up. Because I would like to finish Act 1 this week. All right, scene 6. Octavio, would you read this, please?
Yes. Right. Genesis 24, 62 to 67. Isaac had just Isaac had just come back from the vicinity of Beer Lahai-roi, where he was settled in the region of Negeb. And Isaac went out walking in the field toward evening, and looking up, he saw camels approaching. Raising her eyes, Rebekah saw Isaac. She alighted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field toward us?" And the servant said, "That is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself. The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Isaac then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he took Rebekah as his wife. Isaac loved her and thus found comfort after his mother's death.
Okay. We have a note and some questions.
Note that when it says Rebecca alighted from the camel, it literally means she fell from her camel, thus perhaps insinuating that she fell in love. Question 1. What might Rebecca be thinking during this part of the story? Question 2. What might Rebecca be feeling during this part of the story?
Thank you.
Didn't the servant tell the people, Bethuel, that his master was Abraham, not Isaac? So why is he now saying that Isaac is his master?
They're both his master.
Because he's the son of his master. And also, I think she covered herself for modesty.
Mm-hmm.
Economically, Isaac's the holder of the wealth now. Yitzchak, Abraham conveyed his wealth to Yitzchak for inducement for the betrothal. I believe. I read it in the commentary. I'll let you guys do that. It's something I think.
It's a good noticing, Herb. All right, so what is Rebecca feeling? What is she thinking?
It's possible that she was overwhelmed with feelings for Isaac that she never expected to have for the strange person who suddenly appears. And her body's reaction was to fall off the camel because she lost control. And the next thing you know, Isaac then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah and took Rebecca as his wife, meaning they had relations immediately upon seeing each other. So this was a mutual love story from the beginning.
But he didn't really see her since she was veiled.
Too often.
Well, that doesn't preclude the fact that he was smitten by her, and as Cinda says, immediately took her as his wife. That wouldn't be the first time that this happened in the history of the world. That's for sure.
Probably saw her eyes.
Interesting enough, Sarah had passed away by this point, so the tent, he didn't really take her into his mother's tent because Sarah was no longer there.
That matches the last part of that sentence, that he used the tent of his mother to be with Rebecca, and that whole surrounding of his mother around him from her tent brought him comfort.
I know that the Torah doesn't necessarily have chronological order, but in the order of the way the scripture is presented to us, the purchase of Machpelah by Abraham hasn't been done yet. In other words, at least we don't know about it. And therefore, if it were chronological, it was?
Yeah, it was in chapter 23.
Oh, okay. I back off that. Then she's out of the picture.
It says Sarah had to be dead already, of course, because it says in the end of verse the end of the chapter, Isaac was comforted for his mother, that is, who he was mourning, right? And this is how he did it.
All right, last thoughts about how what Rebecca's thinking, or how she might be feeling during this part of the story.
Probably felt loved after the end of the story.
And that's a good place to leave this.